Hello there beautiful, how are you doing today? My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now today's video we're going to be talking about that martial arts kicking and punching girl that we like to call Ursula, which is Yang's daughter from Final Fantasy IV The After Years, and her returning banner along with her brand new FR, as well as the return of Cinque and Freya for this particular banner. So if you'd like to know more about Ursula, the banner that she comes on, and of course the event that she's arriving with, then of course as always stay tuned and keep on watching. Now before we continue, of course, don't forget to check out all of my social media links down in the description box below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord and Patreon, and my Instagram as well, which isn't actually related to Final Fantasy at the moment just yet, but I've been really trying to grow my account as an artist and as a makeup artist and stuff like that, and basically keeping it all separate from YouTube and Twitch for the time being, with little intersections maybe here and there through cosplay and the like. So if you'd like to come and follow me over on Instagram, it'd be very much appreciated, as it is something that I'm actively trying to grow. I do also have my San Diego TwitchCon drive that's currently happening, which I have more details for over in my community tab, as well as on my Twitch channel itself. So if you'd like to take part in that, then that would be wonderful as well. And of course, over on Patreon, I do always shout out one of my Patreons every time I release a video, so I can give thanks to each of you supporters individually. And today that person is going to be Mr. Kuro, who has Cloud as their title card, and from Advent Children I thought I'd pick something a little iconic from there. So thank you ever so much for your support and your generosity, and to all of my patrons for keeping this channel going as much as you are. Massively appreciated. And if you'd like to join in with that and all the conversations, including Would You Pull, all sorts of other stuff like that, you can click on the link in the description box below for that. And of course, lastly, don't forget to check out all the other content creators out there for Dissidia Opera Omnia, as they all appreciate your views and your love too. So just the one banner for us to talk about today, and that is of course Ursula's banner, which is going to feature obviously Ursula's full kit as well as her brand new FR, Gabrant's BT if perhaps you didn't pick it up during Odin's banner, and then it's also going to feature Freya and Cinque. Now Freya doesn't actually get a rework or any additional buffs from this particular banner, but if you missed out on her last time or didn't particularly fancy her, and Kain is just not enough Dragoon for you, then perhaps you might like to consider picking her up here, because she's still a very strong character. She's still got healing, she's still got party-wide last stand, and is another outlet for those Dragoon spears between turns. So if you wanted to pick her up here, now's a good time for you to do so. Now, Cinque we're going to talk about first. Now, Cinque is a character, or Cinque, or Cinque, or Sank, like however you want to pronounce it. It does get a rework here, and it does make her slightly less clunky, if not completely ideal. So her main thing was applying the stun debuff to enemies as she attacked them, and then as she got to 5 stacks of stun by attacking them or by the party attacking them, she'd get plus versions of her 2 main skills, which would then add delay to them and hit harder as long as they did so. But originally it would remove the stun stack, so she'd then have to reapply it and build it back up from scratch. Whereas now with her reworks, after using the plus versions of her skills, she's now going to reset the stun rating to 1 instead of removing it entirely. Of course, big shout outs here to Mediu for their translations over on Reddit, of course. Now the other thing that makes Cinque stand out is her Braided Girl buff. So Braided Girl gives her a follow-up, her famed Totsugeki follow-up attack after she does any of her moves, which puts a debuff on the enemy, which is a massive defense down and HP damage taken up debuff that only lasts for a few turns before it's removed, because it gets lowered in duration every time you hit them. But this now gets sort of increased in its HP number of damages, so this is obviously going to stack really nicely with all of her other stuff. And then her EX is also going to be getting some buffs here as well, which is always going to delay all enemies instead of just the one, and this is obviously an attack that guarantees a launch as well from using Cinque. So she gets loads of HP dumps here, more HP dumps added because of the Totsugeki attack follow-up. There's lots of really nice things to come for Cinque here. She's actually a significantly better character than she was. The only thing you really have to worry about with her is her speed. So if you have ways of manipulating turns so that she's guaranteed to get turns to capitalize on the plus versions of her attacks and the large numbers of HP dumps that she's able to do thanks to her follow-up attacks and sometimes launching as well, then she can actually be a pretty powerful character. Would I go out of my way to pull for her at this point? No, probably not, because she is a little bit on the slow side. She does still have to build up the stacks in order to be able to get the most out of her attacks, even if she's still hitting pretty hard without them nowadays. And she's been streamlined a little bit. She's a little bit less clunky, so her kit just works a little nicer than it used to. So she's a nice character to have, even if she's by no means a mandatory one. And then, of course, we have Ursula, who is the featured character on this banner most. And if you remember rightly, she wasn't released all that long ago. She was released fairly late into Lufenia era. And therefore, her rework is solid, but it doesn't really add a huge amount to what she does. So if you've not used Ursula before, she is a strange character that is based around dealing damage whilst also keeping party bravery high through her LD and just battery abilities that she has. They have a slight twist to them to your regular bravery gains. So Tenketsu gets reworked here to have additional HP dumps and also inflicts the debuff Tenketsu itself, which is a speed and defense framed debuff. Just a nice thing to have on top of everything else that she does. Chakra sets party bravery to its max bravery. So note that it sets the number to max bravery. It's not a bravery gain as such, so it's not something that can be affected by either higher brave gains or reducing brave gains. It goes straight to max bravery, no questions asked. And now it deals 3 HP dumps, and it doesn't consume bravery, and it gives you a free turn afterwards. So this is something you'll see a lot with Ursula. She has a lot of free turns in her kit, which can go either way as to how useful that can be. Her LD, which is the attack that gives her buff Pride from Father, which gives you party-wide HP damage, bit more bravery damage for her, and it also gives you the max bravery floor that she's most well known for. So if you've used Varn's burst ability, you'll kind of know what to expect here. Basically, if a character's bravery would go below 20%, it doesn't. So then it means you can't get broken. She also gains the ability to take a free turn after after an enemy has acted and a party member would go next, so she doesn't interrupt multiple enemy turns. So she then gets a free turn before that party member, in theory, in order to battery them or use something else. She also gets another HP attack that comes off of this as well, which is Tenshoha, which will give you 3 HP attacks that don't consume bravery, extend your buffs by a turn, and do damage equal to each character's bravery in your party. So that's all improved, and then her EX is obviously massively improved as well. Her EX would give her a party-wide attack and max bravery buff from her Teaching's True Fist buff, and also inflict a unframed defense and speed down, as well as Tenketsu, which is itself a speed and defense down. So nice little debuffs, nothing crazy. She's not a major debuffing unit. She's there as an aura-based damage dealer, which she can be very good at. So you get 4 hit defense ignoring HP attacks, and then it's important to note as well that her LD attack is also defense ignoring as well, and because she has so many brave gains and sort of brave sets, things like that, you find that you don't actually need to be dealing a huge amount of bravery damage for Ursula to be dealing the most amount of damage that she can do. It now actually recovers a use of her chakra ability, which is the one that sets all your bravery to max, so that's really nice as well. And her C88, so her AA, is going to get the ability to improve party-wide brave damage caps as well as attack up. So it's all just nice stuff. But she doesn't... The thing to remember with her is that any character that takes free turns with their stuff has to be careful during force time, because obviously you'd rather deal a large amount of damage in one turn than it being split across multiple turns. And because Ursula cuts in front a lot, you have to be careful with that. This is helped, though, by her FR ability. Now, her FR ability pairs her up with Ash, which is lovely. And it again sets everyone's bravery to max after dealing a large amount of damage, has instant turn rate as well, and sets up a force time effect of when a character's current bravery is at least 20% or more of their max bravery, they get 15%, and when it's at least 100% or more of their max bravery, they get plus 30%. Which is nice, because it's a very generic ability, and sometimes these are just nice to have access to. Like, if you're not sure who you want to take or who you want to have an FR for, but you don't want to take someone particularly specialized like Kamnanor or Tidus, or even somebody like Desh or Kryl, you can just chuck Ursula in there and she'll just do the job, because what she requires from her force time isn't particularly hard to accomplish, as long as you're keeping your bravery high. And so many characters have brave refund on their abilities now. The chance of you proccing that second bit of having at least your max bravery or higher is actually very, very easy. If you like using Garnet, then that's already going to do that job very well. Ursula herself, like, yeah, she jumps in front of turn orders and stuff, but at least she's going to be dealing damage in those free turns whilst also bolstering her own FR time. So honestly, I think that Ursula, again, not a mandatory character by any means, but she's got a lot going for her with her FR. She's definitely somebody I think people might want to consider, just based on how much access she has to just easy force time, and the unbreakability is something that's really valuable. I used Alphino a lot on the back of just having unbreakable characters, and having access to that with Ursula, who, let's face it, is significantly better than Alphino at this point. It's just a nice thing to have. Okay, so now let's take a look at the event that comes along with Ursula, and that is going to feature a very similar boss to what we fought with her the first time around, which are the Killing Scissors. So these are variants on the crab enemies that we've seen before, and their main thing is going to be trying to do nasty things to you through breaking you and reducing the amount of bravery gains that you do, in order to kind of sell Ursula to you a little bit, because obviously the way that she gains bravery is a bit different to most characters, and of course by having the max bravery floor, you're not going to be able to get broken, so that's obviously trying to push her a little bit. So the way that these guys will work is that when they hit their force time, they will use an attack that can straight up just break you very quickly, or like just auto break you, so you have to be careful of that. And their normal bubble breath attack actually has delay in it as well, and while they're in force time they do more HP damage, and they get a new attack which is a single target bravery attack that inflicts a paralysis to anything that is broken or broken by this attack, and they also give themselves speed up and defense up. They can also, through some of their other attacks, inflict defense down, speed down, turn rate down, things like that. Not very pleasant sort of debuffs for you to have, so if you're worried about that kind of thing, especially when you consider the breaking that comes off of the force time attack, then you might want to consider bringing somebody that can resist debuffs, somebody like Lena or Ignis, if you wanted to avoid that. And as you can see here, as the force time goes up, of course, massive shout outs to DissidiaCompanion.com as well for the information presented here. If you wanted to avoid sort of the abilities that come out of this as well, bringing somebody that can help your bravery a lot is going to be very useful. But as I say, as the force gauges increase, it makes it so that the amount of bravery that you gain is reduced as the force gauge increases. And it means that the party brave damage resistance goes down as well, or they make it so that they take less damage from you, so that you're like just having a little bit of a harder time. So brave gains are reduced, as is bravery damage, so you want ways around it. So there's loads of ways that you can deal with this. Like if you wanted to, there is absolutely no reason why you couldn't just take your Camelot and Tidus or your Camelot and Machina and just go to town on it. But do bear in mind that at 79% and 29% HP, the enemies will drain your bravery to 0, so that is something you may want to bear in mind in case of certain strategies you might be taking. Although, if you wanted to, you could also use the delays that these enemies use to your advantage by taking somebody like Oren or Layla, or somebody that can take advantage of the enemy turn rate. I have had a lovely, lovely time using Kryl to have the FR active during enemy turns with off-turn damage dealers like Kayn and Oren, so that I'm gaining just force time without the force time ticking down. And I'm beginning to see why everyone's so excited for Reno now, and now I want him. But other than that, you could also take Freya. Like, one thing I didn't mention by saying that Freya, doesn't get a lot from this banner, she actually does get something pretty significant here, which is going to be force enhancement points. So if you wanted to invest in Freya as well as Kayn for that purpose, or even Freya instead of Kayn if you're that way inclined, then you can do that, and you'll be able to build the gauge up using Freya, and that's a really strong thing for her. Or if you wanted to, you could just take, like I said, there's loads of options with this fight. They only have 50 million HP each, which is obviously a darn sight smaller than the likes of Odin. But you just have to just make sure that you get your FR gauge, go off, do your thing, make sure you're protected from nasty debuffs, even through a call like Lena's or something like that, and just deal as much damage as you can without letting your bravery get too low. It's a fairly simple fight, certainly after Odin. So now, of course, we have the would you pull section of the video, the part of the video where you guys get your chance to let your voice be heard and let everyone know whether you would pull on one of these banners and why that may or may not be the case. So once again, a massive thank you goes out to my patrons for their votes and their comments for this lovely swap pick. It's lovely to have everyone else's opinions as well as my own featured so that everyone else can see what the general consensus is. So, of the 100 plus people we asked, when it comes to Ursula's banner, 22% of people said they were going to use gems on this banner, 61% of people said they were going to use 100 or more tickets, and 17% of people said they were going to use less than 100 tickets. And interestingly, nobody said no to this banner, which I find very interesting, because while I think that Ursula is very good, I do think she's a cool character to have access to, and having access to a fairly generic FR is a nice thing to have access to. I'm surprised to see that nobody is skipping this particular banner. But let's go into some of the comments. So Neku, which we'll start off with here, says 100 plus tickets here. I love the character in DFFOO and the way she handles Brave games. Having just gemmed Tidus, I'm saving for Luna Freya, and being wary of that mystery banner has me on a gem saving mode. Then again, Ursula's FR I believe is a solid pick, since not only is she viable in many teams, but also looking way into the future, a good candidate to mix with others whose FR board is unlocked. So yeah, she's definitely got some future proofing ahead of her as well. And I will say, like, referring to the mystery banner, I will be making a video assuming that this banner is Terra FR, because I believe that it probably will be her, and she's being brought forward very slightly. I'm not sure whether they'll be bringing forward the Kieran or the Kieran and Zac banner, or whether it's going to have the Ace and Ramza banner instead, like it did in JP. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think is going to be that banner. I have a firm feeling that it's gonna be Terra. Moving over to the next comment, Cam Geary says 100 plus tickets for me. I wasn't planning on it before, but with the new Ted to Defy event, I suddenly feel the need to pull harder for more force weapons. Now, the one thing I will say here is be very careful with that. You have to weigh up your options as to whether finishing the Dare to Defy stuff is worth the resources you would need to put in to do it. And I'm not necessarily talking about like tickets and gems. I'm talking about stuff like force enhancement crystals and force enhancement or force weapon high power stones, because there's 7 missions here, and if you don't have all the FRs available to you, is it worth the rewards that the Dare to Defy is having? Bear in mind that JP never had the Dare to Defy missions, and honestly I'm a little disappointed in them, if I'm honest. Like, it's just the same Shinryus again, but you have a lockout mechanic. Now, don't get me wrong, I like encouraging using lots of different characters, but I do think that feeling forced into using your resources for what doesn't look like that much return doesn't necessarily feel like the right move to me. If you weren't planning on pulling on Ursula before, I wouldn't allow Dare to Defy to make you feel forced to, as though you had to. There's some nice stuff in there, but I think that, you know, going without is also an option if you're happy to do so. And then finally, Kieran says, gems for me. I need everything on this banner. I love what Ursula does. Not being able to be broken is marvellous. Now, FR allows for a wide array of team compositions. A solid early FR pick. If you didn't manage to get Gabranth BT like me, this is the perfect opportunity, since we don't know what Red Comet will bring, and Fujin is laughable. I agree. I think that, like, speaking from experience with Alphino, like, I use Alphino a lot, and I feel that people always focused on the HP poison aspect of him and not being able to be broken. And I have to say, there's a safety in that is wonderful. So Ursula being able to bring that along as well, while also bringing a much wider array of damage abilities and just different ways of acting, I think is really wonderful. And she has an FR that's generic, that works with lots of characters. I do think she's a very solid pick. And with Gabranth BT, I will point this out now, like, the first goal that is on my drive for San Diego is to pull for Fujin FR and pity it. So while my sort of view on this is a little skewed because I am punishing myself like a masochist, apparently, I do think that if you already have Gabranth FR and want Gabranth BT, this is probably your best shot to get it, because I don't think Red Comet's BT will be Gabranth. I think it will be Terra. So definitely sort of like, if you're not sure though, there's nothing wrong with waiting and seeing what comes out of that. These banners are live for multiple weeks. You don't have to go into a banner the first day it comes out. So if you're worried about, like, unforeseen circumstances, maybe hold off for a couple of days. So now let's ask ourselves the big question: should you be pulling for Ursula, Cinque, or Freya? Now, Ursula's a very versatile character, thanks to just how easy her FR conditions are to fulfill. All she really needs is for characters to be able to keep hold of their bravery, and there are so many ways of doing that, including, of course, Ursula herself, that that's not a difficult thing to do, and you'll be able to at least get a solid FR time just by having Ursula's FR up and just doing what you would normally do. She does also provide some very cool things to the party, including a max bravery floor for the party, which of course prevents breaks and the like, but it also helps characters that have a lot of HP dumps in their kit, because it means that they'll have a bravery value between attacks, even if they don't necessarily gain it for themselves. And she provides some nice little speed and defense drops as well for like the enemies. So just having those extra debuffs is kind of nice. However, she's by no means perfect. She doesn't actually do very much damage, despite the fact that for some reason a lot of people class her as a damage dealer. She's capable of doing damage in instant turn rates and sort of spread across multiple turns, but during force time that's not actually a good thing, because you want to be dealing large numbers of HP dumps within singular turns so that you're capitalizing on the limited amount of force time that you have. So while Ursula's stealing turns left, right and center after enemy turns, instead of your characters that could be doing much greater amounts of damage, there are going to be times where she might be a bit irritating in terms of how much force time damage you're able to get. Now, when it comes to Freya and Cinque, like, Freya's still a great character. Like, if anything, half the reason that I suggested not pulling for her the first time around, if you didn't want to, I still pulled for her, and I still think she's an amazing character, but it was because I knew how quickly she was going to come back, and I know that now is kind of like a bit rawer in resources for people who pulled for Camelot and Tidus, but we also just had Divine Odin as well, so now might be a great time to pick her up if you didn't the first time round. She's a much more aura-driven, healing version of Kayn, who, like, obviously does more damage than she does and has a burst effect active to give you all those delicious cap-ups and stuff, but Freya's still got legs, and for a little while to come as well, and the fact that she's now got force enhancements makes that all the more relevant. Cinque, on the other hand, I have never really enjoyed playing as Cinque in this game. Like, she does large amounts of damage now, and she's a lot less clunky than she used to be, thanks to the fact that, you know, she doesn't remove her stun debuff when she uses her plus versions of her attacks anymore, but she still sets them to 1, and even though her HP damage increase now doesn't depend on how many stacks of stun she has, she still wants to be able to keep the stun stacks to 5, which you can maintain by having multiple enemies on the board and just making sure you're not hitting the one that has the 5 stacks in it so you reduce them to 1. But it just seems like a little too much effort for somebody that's that slow in battle and isn't doing that much greater things than a lot of other characters can do at this point. Or there's a lot of things that you can do with other characters that you don't have to jump through as many hoops for as you would just to have Cinque in your party. Can you work her if you like her? Absolutely. There aren't many characters in this game that I wouldn't say that about. And can she deal a lot of damage? Absolutely. Her follow-up has more HP dumps. She has guaranteed launches in some of her attacks. She can churn out a lot of damage if you wanted to. I just personally feel that she's a little more effort than she's worth. So that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope you found something useful in this video. Let me know in the comments below whether you're pulling for Ursula or Freya or Cinque even, or if this is just another stopgap between you and Charlotta and Luna Freya. Of course, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, and come along and find me on Twitch if you want to join the discussion on these characters live as they happen with the events. I think I've decided with the Dare to Defy missions, what I'm going to do is wait until they're all out. All of the options are available, and then maybe I'll just release like one long video with a clear for all of them on the day of the 7th one. I don't know, let me know in the comments below what you think of that, because I did want to do it in the last video, but then I thought actually if I got Gabrant's BT at some point it'll make my life so much easier, so I think I'm happy to wait for that. And I think it's important to note as well that sometimes, you know, you don't have to go and clear content on day 1, not even content creators like me. Like, obviously everyone's kind of racing to get their stuff out there first, but given the time that these games release their events for me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I've already made my peace with the fact that that's never going to be me. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think of that, and I will hopefully see you next time. So thank you for watching, beautiful, and I'll catch you then. Take care.